The wind howled through the shattered remnants of the city, carrying with it a sense of finality that seemed to whisper of death. Seraphina's boots crunched against the broken pavement, her every step punctuated by the sound of crumbling stone and discarded debris. The world had changed long ago, and the earth she once knew was gone, consumed by forces both human and unnatural. The ruins of skyscrapers loomed like skeletal sentinels in the distance, their shattered windows dark and vacant, a haunting reminder of humanity's failed ambitions. She wasn't sure how much time had passed since the collapse. Days? Weeks? The world no longer adhered to the rules of time. The silence, however, was always the same. It had become a constant presence, a reminder that everything was lost. The once bustling streets were now nothing more than empty corridors of destruction, the echoes of human existence swallowed by the unnatural fog that rolled in from every corner. Seraphina's heart beat steadily in her chest as her eyes scanned the horizon. She didn't need to look back. She could feel them. The shadows. The things that watched from the edges of her vision. The creatures that stalked the land, twisted remnants of the past, horrors that had been unleashed after the final disaster. The monsters that had made the world unsafe, that had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. She gripped her knife tighter, the cold steel a comfort in her hand. She had grown accustomed to the weight of it, to the feeling of protection it gave her. It was the only thing she could rely on in this hellscape. Ahead, the faintest flicker of light caught her attention. She paused, her instincts sharp as always. It wasn't the soft glow of a distant fire or the flicker of broken neon lights, it was different. It was steady, unnatural in its constancy. Her fingers tingled with unease. She hadn't seen another living soul in days. The light seemed out of place, like a beacon in the endless sea of desolation. Stay focused. Don't get distracted. The warning echoed in her mind, but something about the light intrigued her. It wasn't just a random signal, it felt deliberate. Her breath hitched as she made her decision. She would investigate. The world had been silent for far too long. This, whatever it was, could mean something. A survivor. A chance to understand what had happened. A glimmer of hope. With measured steps, she moved forward, her eyes scanning the buildings around her. The flicker of light grew brighter, now unmistakable. It came from an alleyway between two crumbling structures. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest as the air grew colder, the fog thickening around her. The alley was narrow, a dark passageway clogged with debris and old, rusting machinery. Her feet slipped slightly on the wet ground, the air dense with the smell of decay. As she neared the source of the light, she saw it, a faint glow coming from a small, cracked door near the end of the alley. She approached cautiously, pressing her back against the rough stone wall, the shadows blending into her figure. The light was coming from within, pulsating softly, almost as though it were alive. Something was there. Something waiting. She reached for the handle of the door, hesitated for just a moment, then twisted it. The door creaked open with a protest, the sound sharp in the heavy silence. Inside, the space was dimly lit, a small room lined with broken equipment and scattered papers. The smell of mold and rust filled the air. Yet there was the light, steady, almost unnervingly so, emanating from the corner of the room, cast by an old terminal screen. The screen flickered, sparking with energy that shouldn't have been possible. It looked out of place, out of time, as if it were some relic from a forgotten era. Seraphina stepped inside, her boots sinking into the thick dust. Her breath caught as she noticed the faint hum, the soft buzz of electricity in the air. The terminal screen blinked again, the static clearing for a moment to reveal a simple message. Asterisk. Access denied. System rebooting. Asterisk. The words sent a shiver down her spine. There shouldn't be any power left. Not this much. Not this, alive. Her curiosity outweighed the danger, and she stepped closer. There was something about this place, this terminal, that called to her. She couldn't explain it, but there was a pull, something primal inside her that urged her to find out more. She hadn't seen a functioning machine in years, not like this. She reached out, fingers trembling as she touched the keyboard, the cold plastic still surprisingly intact. The terminal screen flickered once more, as if it recognized her presence. Then the hum deepened, the air around her thickening with electricity. The words that appeared next were not what she expected. Asterisk. Connection established. Asterisk. The terminal blinked, and then the words changed again, this time faster, appearing in rapid succession. Asterisk. Hello, Seraphina. Asterisk. Her breath caught in her throat. The voice, no, the message, it knew her name. Her fingers trembled over the keys, her mind racing. There was no way this could be a coincidence. No way this system could have come online after all these years. Someone, or something, was behind this. A low, guttural growl came from somewhere deep within the building, echoing in the distance. It was a familiar sound, one that Seraphina had learned to fear. It was a monster, one of them. And it was close. Her heart leapt into her throat as the growl grew louder, followed by the sound of something heavy scraping across the floor. She didn't have much time. Seraphina backed away from the terminal, her knife drawn and ready. The faint hum of the machine still filled the room, its eerie glow casting long shadows on the walls. She wasn't sure who, asterisk or what asterisk, was behind this, but it was clear she wasn't alone anymore. As the growl grew louder, the screen flashed once more, and a new message appeared. Asterisk. Run! They know you're here. Asterisk. The door slammed shut behind her as Seraphina sprinted down the narrow corridor, her breath quickening. There was no turning back now. The world had just opened a door into something far worse than she could have imagined. And whatever was waiting for her in the dark, it was coming for her now. Seraphina's feet pounded against the cracked, uneven pavement as she ran. The growl from behind her had escalated into a horrifying roar, reverberating through the decaying walls of the building. She didn't dare look back, not when the sound of heavy, dragging footsteps was getting closer with every second. Whatever it was relentless. Her breath was shallow, every inhalation sharp with panic. The alley she had sprinted through moments ago had become a dead end. The walls pressed in on her, a claustrophobic reminder that she was trapped in a city long forsaken, its very bones now home to things she was never meant to understand. The floor trembled beneath her, making her stumble as she tried to regain her balance. She cursed under her breath. The ground was shaking. She had felt it before, an unnatural quiver beneath her feet, but now it was worse. Something was coming. Her eyes flicked toward a small stairwell at the end of the corridor, its rusted door ajar. She had no other choice. She pushed herself forward, every step a battle against the panic trying to claw its way up her throat. As she reached the door, she shoved it open with force, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. The sound seemed to echo through the empty building, but she didn't care. The only thing that mattered was getting to higher ground, getting out of the path of whatever creature had just been awakened by her presence. She slipped inside, quickly closing the door behind her with a soft click. The room she entered was dark, the only light coming from the occasional flicker of distant streetlights outside the broken windows. The musty smell of stale air and long-abandoned life filled her nostrils. Dust motes danced lazily in the weak light, suspended in the air as if time itself had frozen in this place. Seraphina's heart hammered in her chest as she scanned the room. It was an old storage room, filled with broken crates and discarded items. In the corner of the room was a rusted metal ladder leading up to a second floor. She didn't hesitate. Climbing the ladder as fast as her shaking hands would allow, she reached the top and found herself in a small, dimly lit loft space. She took a moment to steady herself, leaning against the wall, trying to catch her breath. Her body was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. The growl of the creature, asterisk whatever it was asterisk, was still in her ears, echoing like a death knell. She didn't know if it was the same thing that had followed her through the city, or if it was something worse, but she wasn't about to stick around to find out. Her eyes darted around the loft, searching for an escape, a way to evade whatever monster had set its sights on her. The floor creaked beneath her as she moved, a reminder of the building's fragile state. She couldn't trust the structure to hold for long. The loft opened up into another room, its windows covered in grime and cracked glass. As she stepped into the room, she stopped dead. The place was covered in markings, scratches and symbols etched into the walls, symbols that made her blood run cold. No. Seraphina's mind reeled. The walls, the floor, everything was marked with warnings, some ancient, others more recent. Symbols she didn't recognize, each marking the place as something forbidden. She ran her hand across one of the symbols, a long, jagged line intersected by a circle, and shuddered. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she heard the sound again. Closer this time. It was unmistakable. The footsteps. The scraping. It was no longer just one. The sounds were multiplying. She was surrounded. There was no time to think. No time to question the origins of the markings. Her pulse quickened as her gaze snapped to the far corner of the room, where a faint light filtered through a crack in the wall. She moved toward it cautiously, pushing aside debris and rubble as she went. She didn't know where it led, but she couldn't stay here. Not with that thing closing in. The light was coming from a small crack in the wall. She pushed at it, but it wouldn't budge. Desperation clawed at her chest, and with a force she didn't know she had, Seraphina shoved at the wall again. This time, it gave way, revealing a narrow passage leading further into the building. It was a crawl space, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. But it was an escape. She didn't think twice. She threw herself into the opening, her body scraping against the jagged edges as she twisted and turned, moving as quickly as she could. Every movement felt like it might be her last. Every breath was harder to take as the air grew staler, the passage more confined. But there was no going back. She had to keep going. She didn't know how long she had been crawling when the passage opened up into another room, larger than the others she had encountered. This one was different. It felt colder, darker, like the walls were closing in on her. The light that flickered from a dying bulb in the corner did little to illuminate the surroundings. She rose slowly to her feet, every muscle in her body aching, her vision blurred by exhaustion. It was hard to focus. To think. The terror of being hunted, of not knowing what was coming next, was taking its toll. Her eyes moved to the far corner of the room, where something was shimmering in the dim light. She stepped forward cautiously, heart racing as the object in the corner took shape. It was a door. A heavy, metal door locked and bolted shut. An escape. She stumbled toward it, her breath ragged in her throat. She didn't care if it was the safest option or the worst choice. She just needed to get out, get away from the creatures that had followed her here. Her fingers brushed against the lock. The sound of something scraping against the walls outside the room made her freeze. The door, please open, With trembling hands, she worked the lock, every second feeling like an eternity. She heard the growl again, closer now, and this time she didn't wait. She swung the door open with a force born of desperation, stepping into the unknown beyond. The hallway beyond was dark. The hum of the lights above made her skin crawl. But there was something else too. The feeling. The presence. And she wasn't alone anymore. As the door slammed shut behind her, Seraphina's heart skipped a beat. She had escaped, but into what? The dark hallway beckoned. And she had no choice but to move forward. The hallway was suffocating in its stillness. Every step Seraphina took felt like a betrayal of the silence around her. The heavy thrum of her heart was the only sound she could hear, each beat reverberating in her skull as if the walls themselves were echoing her fear. She didn't know where she was or where the passage would lead, but it didn't matter. She had no choice but to move forward. The creatures, the ones she had barely escaped, were still out there. She could hear their growls, feel their presence just beyond her reach. Every instinct in her screamed to turn back, to run, but she had no way of knowing if the way she had come would even be safe. The creatures were unpredictable, merciless. The corridor stretched before her, its walls jagged with the decay of years. The flickering lights above only added to the sense of unease. The room she had just left felt like a distant memory now, a dream, or maybe a nightmare. All she could focus on was the movement ahead, the next step, the next escape. Her legs were heavy, dragging with the weight of exhaustion. But fear, that primal, sharp sting, kept her moving. She pressed her palm against the cold, rusting metal walls, letting the chill seep into her skin as she moved deeper into the unknown. Then she heard it again. A soft, scraping sound. Like claws against concrete. Her heart dropped into her stomach, the familiar terror creeping in like smoke. The feeling that she wasn't alone. That something, or someone, was following her. She froze, listening, trying to discern the direction of the sound. The echo of it bounced off the walls in a way that made it impossible to tell where it was coming from. I'm not alone. The thought stabbed at her chest. She wasn't imagining it. The scraping grew louder, then softer, as if the thing was moving with deliberate, haunting steps, closer now. Seraphina pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. Her knife was already gripped in her hand, cold and ready. She couldn't afford to make a mistake now. The adrenaline surged, forcing her to make a decision, move forward, or confront whatever it was behind her. But as she turned to look, the sound ceased. The eerie silence returned, and for a moment, Seraphina allowed herself a shallow breath. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe it was just the shifting of old pipes or the wind pushing through cracks in the walls. But the gnawing feeling remained. Her instincts, honed by years of survival, told her otherwise. Something was wrong. She quickened her pace, moving cautiously down the hallway, her mind racing for an escape. She didn't know where she was going, but she had to keep moving. The fear and the exhaustion were starting to cloud her judgment, but she couldn't let it break her resolve. The corridor opened up ahead, leading into a large room. The lights in this part of the building were long dead, the darkness swallowing everything whole. Seraphina squinted into the blackness, trying to make out any shapes. The room was massive, too large to get a good sense of the layout. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, and the air felt heavier here, thick with something ancient, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. She stepped into the room, her boots making no sound on the floor, though her pulse felt as if it were reverberating through the air. She took one cautious step after another, her hand still tight on her knife, ready for anything. Then she saw it. A shape, no, not just a shape, but a figure, standing in the far corner of the room, barely illuminated by the faintest bit of light creeping through cracks in the walls. The figure was tall, towering, humanoid but distorted. Its silhouette was monstrous, outlined in the dim light like some twisted mockery of life. Its presence filled the space, its very being suffocating the air around it. Seraphina froze. Her heart skipped a beat, then another. This wasn't a creature like the ones she had encountered before. This thing was something else. Something ancient. She tried to back away, but her body refused to obey. The creature's presence was oppressive, pushing down on her chest, making it harder to breathe. It didn't move. It didn't need to. The very sight of it, its unnatural stillness, sent a shiver through her, making her question if she had seen it at all. But she had to act. Seraphina raised her knife, the cold steel gleaming faintly in the darkness. "Who are you?" Her voice trembled as the question left her lips. She hated herself for sounding so weak, so unsure. But she had to know. The figure didn't respond, its form remaining eerily still. The silence between them was maddening, filling the air with an unbearable weight. The tension grew thicker, a pulse of energy vibrating through the ground beneath her feet. The creature knew she was there. It didn't need to acknowledge her. She stepped forward, her movements cautious but driven by a deep, gut-wrenching need to understand what this was. The world felt like it was closing in, the walls of the room shifting as if they too were watching her, reacting to her every movement. She took another step, then another, closing the distance between herself and the thing. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps now. Each step was heavier than the last. What are you, ? She asked again, her voice desperate, but the thing remained silent. And then, as she stepped too close, it moved. It didn't lunge at her. It didn't rush toward her like an animal on the hunt. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, its glowing eyes fixed on hers. And in that moment, Seraphina realized that it didn't need to move at all. Its presence was enough to paralyze her, to break her. The room seemed to collapse in on her, the walls pressing inward, the shadows closing in with a malevolent force. Her breath was shallow, the weight of its gaze pinning her in place, unable to move, unable to think. In the stillness she heard it. The whisper. Soft at first, like the rustling of leaves, but it grew louder, filling her ears, her mind. You should have never come here. Seraphina's heart pounded in her chest as the room around her began to tremble again, the floor quaking beneath her feet. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, and it was then that she realized what she had feared all along. The ground beneath her feet cracked wide open, and from the chasm that appeared, something far worse than the creature she had seen rose to meet her. And the real horror began. The ground shattered beneath her, a deep crack splitting the floor like the earth was being torn apart. Seraphina barely had time to react. Her body lurched forward, the sudden drop beneath her feet sending her plummeting into the abyss. She screamed, the sound lost in the roaring chaos as she fell. Her arms flailed, trying to find something to grab onto, but there was nothing. Just the raw, suffocating darkness, and the weight of the world collapsing in on her. Her heart raced as she tumbled, her body twisting unnaturally. The jagged edges of broken concrete scraped against her skin, ripping at her clothes as she fell further into the unknown. The deeper she fell, the heavier the air became, the oppressive weight of the space around her suffocating her senses. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. Seraphina gasped, her body jerking to a halt. Her hands grabbed instinctively at whatever surface she could find. She was dangling from a steel beam, her legs hanging inches above the wreckage, the room below her alive with a strange, unnatural glow. Her breath came in sharp, ragged bursts as she struggled to steady herself. The world around her pulsed, the ground beneath her vibrating with a deep, ominous hum. She could feel it in her bones, the presence. The same thing that had been stalking her since she first stepped into the ruined city. The thing that had awakened, that was now ready to consume everything she had ever known. She pulled herself up, using the last of her strength to climb onto the wreckage, her fingers burning as they gripped the cold metal. The glow below grew stronger, and as she crawled to the edge, she could finally see it. It was a vast cavern, a hollowed-out chamber that seemed to stretch endlessly beneath the building, its depths shrouded in an unnatural, sickly green light. At the center of the cavern, there was something massive, something beyond comprehension. A towering, grotesque form that seemed to pulse and breathe, its shape constantly shifting, like a nightmare given flesh. Its eyes glowed with the same malevolent green light that had haunted her since the moment she'd entered this forsaken place. The creature stood still, its enormous form dominating the cavern. Its skin, if it could even be called skin, was like a mass of shifting shadows and twisted flesh. It was as if reality itself had warped around it, warping everything in the chamber to its will. The very air seemed to bend and twist as it moved, shifting with its grotesque, inhuman presence. Seraphina's stomach turned as the full horror of the creature's being became clear. This wasn't just a monster. It wasn't just an entity born of the nightmares of the earth. This was something far older, something ancient, an evil far beyond her understanding. The very thing that had wiped out humanity, and had been waiting for the last remnants of it to fall. The creature's gaze snapped toward her, its eyes filled with an intelligence that made her blood run cold. The air thickened, pressing down on her chest, suffocating her. The ground beneath her trembled once more, and she stumbled to her feet, her hands trembling. It spoke, though its voice wasn't heard in the traditional sense. It was as if the words came from inside her mind, like they were seeping into her thoughts, warping her very sense of reality. Asterisk. You shouldn't have come here. Asterisk. The words didn't need to be spoken aloud. She could feel them in her bones. The creature wasn't just speaking to her, it was inside her. Its presence consumed everything, its voice rattling the very core of her being. She couldn't escape it. There was no way out. Seraphina gripped the knife in her hand, her fingers numb with fear and exhaustion. She wasn't sure what she was supposed to do now. Her body shook as she took a step back, But the creature's gaze held her in place, like an iron vice clamping down on her soul. She couldn't defeat it. She knew that now. The creature was beyond her strength, beyond anything she had ever faced. It was the end. The end of humanity. The end of the world. But then, she remembered something. The detonator. It was still tucked into her jacket. The weapon. The one thing she had left that might give her a chance to destroy this place, to take down whatever this thing was, no matter the cost. Her fingers went numb as she fumbled to reach it, but the creature didn't move, didn't seem to notice her. It was as if it was waiting for something, waiting for her to make the inevitable move. Her breath hitched in her chest as she retrieved the detonator, her hands shaking violently. She didn't have much time. The creature's presence seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. She could feel the weight of its gaze bearing down on her. Taking a deep breath, Seraphina pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. The world stood still. Then the ground cracked beneath her feet. The cavern roared to life, and the world shook. The walls trembled violently, and the creature let out a sound, a deafening scream that shattered the air around her. The force of the explosion ripped through the chamber, sending shockwaves through the very earth, shaking the foundations of the building. The creature's form flickered, its body twisting as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. Its massive form writhed in the wake of the explosion, its green eyes glowing brighter and brighter, until finally it exploded. The force of the blast consumed the creature in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave sent Seraphina flying backward, the force of the blast slamming her into the ground. Her body ached, every muscle screaming with pain, but she didn't care. She had done it. She had taken down the monster. The world around her seemed to crumble as the building shook. The ground cracked open, the walls collapsing as everything seemed to fall apart. She couldn't tell if she was dead, or if she was just caught in the aftershock of something far worse than she had ever known. But in the distance, beyond the chaos, there was a faint flicker of light. It's not over. With every ounce of strength she had left, Seraphina dragged herself to her feet, staggering toward the exit. She didn't know what would come next, but one thing was clear. The war wasn't over. And as she stepped into the unknown, she realized humanity's survival didn't depend on what was left behind. It depended on what they were willing to fight for.